Welcome to the deep dive. Just take a moment, if you will, and think about the sheer amount of information that just hits us every single day.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It really is. It's an absolute flood. You've got endless headlines scrolling past, breaking news alerts popping up constantly, updates just cascading in from, well, everywhere.
Yeah, it's enough to make anyone feel a bit swamped.
Totally.
Yeah.
So the real question becomes, how do you actually make sense of it all? How do you get past just knowing what happened to, really understanding why it actually matters?
And that's exactly why we're here, isn't it? This is your custom-tailored deep dive. We've specifically designed it to, well, cut through all that noise for you.
Right.
We've gathered a carefully chosen stack of recent sources, articles, reports, our own research notes, even some surprising little insights we found.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission today is pretty simple.
Yeah.
Extract the most important bits of knowledge, those real nuggets. Think of it as your personal shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
A shortcut. I like that.
Yeah, complete with the crucial context you need, maybe some surprising facts you didn't know, and hopefully just enough humor to keep you engaged, all while avoiding that feeling of drowning in data.
Absolutely. And wow, what an incredible, sometimes, let's be honest, bewildering landscape we're looking at today.
You could say that again.
Our sources for this dive paint this really vivid, complex picture of what's happening globally. We're talking everything from, mind-bending tech breakthroughs that are literally reshaping things.
Mm-hmm. The stuff that feels like science fiction sometimes.
Exactly. All the way to major geopolitical shifts that are redrawing the map, and then those deeply moving human stories that just kind of speak to all of us.
It's a real mix.
It is. And finding the common thread, the coherence in all that variety, well, that can be tough. But that's where we come in, right? To guide you through the most significant parts.
Precisely. And for you, our listener, we know you've got a particular interest in the fascinating worlds of science, space, and technology. So while we'll definitely cover the big events across the board, we're going to put a bit of extra emphasis there today. Dive a little deeper into those areas you love.
Great.
And, importantly, you can be absolutely sure that even when we get into potentially sensitive political topics, our approach is going to be strictly impartial. We'll present information from different angles, different viewpoints.
Yeah, lay it all out.
And let you draw your own conclusions. Just like a meticulous journalist would, focusing on the facts without taking sides.
Okay, sounds like a plan. So let's unpack this. Our world is just constantly being redefined by technology. It brings, immense potential for progress, but also, let's face it, some pretty big, unforeseen challenges we need to watch.
Definitely.
First up, in our dive into the cutting edge, the ongoing AI revolution. It seems like it's touching, well, pretty much every corner of our lives now.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How quickly artificial intelligence has gone from being this, futuristic idea to a very real, very present force. It's changing everything from creative fields to high-stakes business.
For sure. And we're seeing this growing tension, aren't we, between sort of traditional human creativity and what AI can now do in areas we used to think were purely human.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
It's not just a theoretical debate anymore, is it?
Not at all. There was a report, I think it was TechCrunch, June 28th. It highlighted this exact tension. Authors are now actively pushing publishers, urging them to commit to a human-generated pledge.
Wow.
Pledge. Yeah. They're clearly worried, concerned about AI's impact on authenticity, even the basic economics of writing literature.
You can see why.
And it goes beyond just copyright issues. It forces us to ask these really fundamental philosophical questions, like, what does authorship even mean when a machine can write prose that might look indistinguishable from human writing?
Right. How does that change things?
Exactly. How could this reshape publishing, or even something as fundamental as intellectual property law? It's a huge question that's suddenly become very, very practical.
That's precisely it. If machines can replicate the form of creation, maybe the value of human authorship shifts, doesn't it? It might become more about the intent, the unique lived experience, the cultural commentary that arguably only a human can truly bring.
That's an interesting way to think about it. So not AI destroying creativity, but redefining its value.
Possibly. In an age where content can be generated so easily, maybe human verified becomes a premium label. It could shift the market rather than just obliterate it. Publishers might start valuing that distinction.
Okay, that makes sense. And moving from creativity to industry, TechCrunch also had another piece, June 30th this time, looking at AI's economic footprint, specifically how it might shake up the high-stakes consulting world.
Ah, yes, the McKinsey piece.
That's the one. It made a pretty pointed comment, didn't it, saying AI is poised to eat McKinsey's lunch. But crucially, they added, not today.
Right, that nuance is key. It suggests a gradual process, maybe, but also kind of inevitable. A transformation where lots of tasks that big consulting firms handle now, data analysis, market research, maybe even initial strategy ideas, could get automated.
Yeah, you can imagine AI just churning through mountains of data in seconds, finding patterns it would take human consultants weeks to spot.
It's like the whole industry is getting this slow motion warning shot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Highly analytical, of course.
Yeah. But you're right. It's not all about AI being a threat to jobs or industries. There are also huge opportunities here. Enhanced capabilities, entirely new industries being created.
Absolutely. Look at the collaborative side. Yahoo Finance reported on June 30th about a pretty significant partnership between Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, HPE, and NVIDIA.
Okay.
They're not competing here. They're teaming up. The goal is to combine NVIDIA's really powerful AI software with HPE's cloud computing and, this is important, their edge solutions.
All right, hold on. Edge solutions. For those of us maybe not totally up on the latest tech buzzwords, what does that actually mean? And why is it so important for AI?
That's a great question, and it's crucial here. So edge computing basically means processing data closer to where it's actually generated, instead of sending everything back to some distant central data center.
Okay, got it. Like on the device itself or nearby.
Exactly. Think about an autonomous car. You don't want it sending all its sensor data miles away to the cloud to figure out if it needs to brake, right? You need decisions made instantly, right there on the edge of the network.
Makes sense. Latency matters.
Hugely. So this HPE-NVIDIA partnership combines NVIDIA's fancy AI algorithms with HPE's infrastructure that can handle this local, super-fast processing. It cuts down delays dramatically, making AI apps much more responsive.
Which is critical for things like,
well, real-time healthcare diagnostics, complex financial trading, and definitely the split-second decisions needed for self-driving vehicles. It's about bringing AI power directly to where the action is. Opens up a ton of new possibilities.
that really does change the game for actually using AI in the real world. It shows how AI is both, a disruptor and a catalyst for new stuff.
Mm-hmm. It feels like we're very much in this adaptive phase, still figuring out the full potential and, well, the societal impact too.
And as AI tech races ahead, the need for proper rules for governance becomes more and more urgent. We're starting to see real efforts to regulate this digital frontier, tackling tricky policy and privacy questions.
Yeah, it's catching up.
Politico reported, June 30th again, about a surprising potential agreement. A truce, even, between Senators Blackburn and Cruz. It's about state-level AI moratoriums and child online safety rules.
What's really interesting there is they've apparently agreed to implement a ban on state-level AI regulation.
Oh, okay. So pushing it to the federal level.
That seems to be the implication. It's a big compromise considering their past differences. It suggests they recognize that a whole mess of different state laws could just stifle innovation and create chaos. They seem to want a unified, probably federal approach.
That's a powerful signal that Washington is finally starting to take this really seriously.
It is. It's fascinating how quickly things can move when the pressure's on.
Right.
But, the digital frontier is already having these big, sometimes negative, real-world impacts in other ways. Impacts we're still kind of scrambling to deal with.
Like what?
Well, take Bitcoin mining. DW had a report on June 30th about the environmental and community costs, especially in rural parts of the U.S. These are often overlooked.
Right, the energy consumption issue.
Exactly. They used a specific example, Dresden, New York. Residents there are dealing with significant noise pollution, environmental worries, all from a nearby Bitcoin mining facility.
Noise pollution from computers.
Well, from the massive cooling systems needed for rows and rows of powerful computers running 147. Bitcoin mining uses this proof-of-work system, basically, solving super complex math problems to validate transactions. It takes an enormous amount of electricity.
Which often comes from...
Often fossil fuels, leading to a big carbon footprint. And locally, like in Dresden, you get that constant hum, maybe even air quality issues. This case really highlights the unintended consequences of policy sometimes.
How so?
Well, the report linked it to the relaxation of crypto regulations under former President Trump. while maybe aimed at fostering innovation, it kind of let these energy-hungry operations pop up in places maybe not equipped to handle the side effects.
That raises that classic tension, doesn't it? Balancing tech progress and economic opportunity with community well-being and the environment.
A tension we're definitely going to see again and again.
Yeah. Now, on a slightly different track, but still about digital defense, Germany seems to be getting pretty proactive on cybersecurity. RT reported, June 30th, that their Interior Minister, Alexander Dobrindt, is calling for a cyberdome.
A cyberdome. Like Israel's Iron Dome, but for hacking?
Pretty much. Modeled on Israel's system, yeah. The idea is to create this multi-layered integrated defense network in the digital world.
So it could detect, track, and neutralize cyber threats.
Yeah.
Like state-sponsored attacks or hacktivist campaigns.
Exactly. Neutralize them before they cause major damage to critical infrastructure, government systems, businesses, you name it.
And the reason for this push?
The numbers are pretty stark. Germany apparently recorded over 131,000 cybercrime cases just in 2024, often linked to pro-Russian or anti-Israeli hacktivist groups. So this cyberdome is about building resilience against what's clearly a growing global threat.
Wow. That's a serious number.
It is. So you can see, right, these regulations, these ethical debates, these new kinds of threats, they're not just abstract tech discussions. They are actively shaping your daily digital life, our society's infrastructure. It really is the new frontier of security.
Absolutely.
And speaking of frontiers and huge efforts, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about space. Adventures in space. It's easy to get lost in the rockets and the launch dates, but behind it all is leadership, vision, and just incredible human dedication. So true. And a great example of that is Lisa Pace. NASA's Johnson Space Center highlighted her role recently, June 30th. She's the chief of the Exploration Development Integration Division.
Okay, that sounds important. What does that division actually do?
It's crucial. They oversee massive projects like the Artemis missions, the plan to get humans back to the moon and then eventually Mars.
Right, the big one.
And also NASA's commercial lunar payload services. Her team's job is incredibly complex. They have to make sure all the different parts of these missions fit together perfectly, meet super strict standards, do all the planning, readiness reviews, certifications.
So kind of the glue holding these huge programs together.
That's a great way to put it. It demands incredible focus, resilience, a really long-term view.
And I read she draws this interesting parallel, doesn't she, between her work and her passion for long-distance running.
She does. It's quite insightful. She talks about how running teaches perseverance, pushing through discomfort, keeping your eye on the long game.
And she applies that to NASA directly. She emphasizes collaboration, building relationships across all these different teams, and really listening to diverse perspectives to solve the incredibly complex problems that inevitably pop up in space exploration.
That's fantastic. It connects these huge, almost abstract goals back to tangible human effort.
Exactly. And her career shows it. She supported the successful Artemis I mission, that critical uncrewed test flight around the moon, and she was key in deploying an orbital debris tracking telescope on Ascension Island.
Orbital debris? Space junk. That's a growing problem, isn't it?
A huge one. Tracking it is vital for mission safety. She's been with NASA over 25 years, started at Lockheed Martin before that. Her whole journey just underscores the dedication, the perseverance, the teamwork behind these monumental achievements. It's not just rockets and code. It's deeply committed people.
A powerful reminder. Okay, so from the future-focused world of tech and space, let's pivot now. We're navigating into the, often complex and contentious realm of global politics and international relations.
I love.
Right. The sheer volume, the complexity of political news today, it can be absolutely dizzying. Trying to figure out what's truly significant versus just the daily noise is tough.
You can definitely say that again. So where do we start? Maybe with some key U.S. domestic and economic policy debates. They're certainly grabbing headlines.
Good place to start. The U.S. Senate has been deep in these intensive debates around former President Trump's big, beautiful bill. Reports from the Washington Post, Al Jazeera, June 30th, put the price tag at more than $3 trillion.
$3 trillion. Wow. That's a number that gets your attention.
It certainly does. And obviously, it's facing intense scrutiny, questions about the national debt, the impact on different economic sectors.
It's not just the total cost, is it? It's what that spending means for inflation, for future generations, for the whole economic structure. Is it stimulus? Is it a ticking time bomb? You see the fundamental economic philosophies clashing right there.
Totally. And this bill is already having political ripple effects, some expected, some maybe less so.
Like the Tillis news.
Exactly. CNN, Axios, Washington Post again June 29th, 30th, reporting Senator Tom Tillis decided not to run for re-election in 2026.
Which was surprising, coming just a day after he voted against that big Trump agenda bill.
Right, and you have to remember, former President Trump had previously criticized Tillis, even threatened him with a primary challenge. So his departure is a really interesting indicator of, internal party dynamics right now.
Mm-hmm. And even Elon Musk is chiming in, predictably.
Almost required at this point. ABC News, June 29th, said Musk renewed his criticism of the big bill, specifically warning it could hurt jobs. Seems worried about market volatility and maybe the tech sector impact.
And yet, amidst all this debate and uncertainty, the S&P 500 recently hit a record high. CNBC noted that on June 30th.
That's a strange disconnect, isn't it? Market highs during all this political churn.
It is, but CNBC also added a really insightful caveat, I thought. They said, as Trump gives, so can he take. Meaning, the market is super sensitive to political decisions. Quick policy shifts can cause unpredictability. So those positive market reactions aren't necessarily locked in. Things could change fast.
Good point. And there's another really significant concern tied to this proposed Trump budget bill. The BBC reported June 29th on a projection from the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO.
What did they find?
They projected that nearly 12 million people could lose health coverage under this bill.
12 million? That's huge.
It really is. It raises massive questions about healthcare access for a huge chunk of the population and the long-term societal costs of that. It really brings the human impact of these big economic policies into sharp focus.
Absolutely. Critical point. And internationally, trade relations are also shifting. Yahoo News, June 30th, reported that trade talks are back on between Canada and the U.S.
Oh, right. That came after Canada scrapped its digital services tax, didn't it?
Exactly. That tax had led former President Trump to suspend earlier talks. So it's a clear example of how a domestic policy choice in one country can directly affect international diplomacy and trade with another.
Yeah, everything's connected. And as we navigate all this, it's probably a good moment to remind everyone listening. Our goal here is just to present the different viewpoints, the potential impacts, without taking sides.
Right. We're laying out the information, the different facets of the debate, like impartial journalists trying to give you the full picture.
Okay, let's hop across the Atlantic. Europe's dealing with its own tensions, evolving alliances. Seems like the continent's political and military landscape is really in flux right now.
Very much so. For instance, on June 29th, RT covered a pretty significant political demonstration in Paris. It was organized by Florian Philippot and his party. The Patriots, they're right-wing, Eurosceptic.
Where did this happen?
Near the Palais Royal in the Louvre. Several hundred people turned out, apparently.
And their message?
Strong opposition to France being in NATO and the EU. They were arguing these alliances are pushing aggressive militarization against Russia. They were calling for Frexit, France leaving the EU.
Wow, Frexit. And they were critical of Macron's support for Ukraine, too.
Sharply critical. They specifically mentioned a $2 billion aid package he approved. It's a really vivid example of the deep divisions within Europe, about its future direction, its relationship with Russia, its alliances.
Meanwhile, Germany's grappling with its own issues, defense needs, and also, in some areas, a worrying rise in nationalism.
Yeah, DW reported June 30th that Marcus Soter, the CSU chief, is making this urgent call to buy 2,000 Patriot rockets.
2,000? For what?
For a German version of an Iron Dome missile defense system. Alexander Dobrindt, another senior CSU figure, supports it too. The stated goal is protecting German cities from future conflicts and also boosting Germany's own missile tech development.
That's a very practical, maybe somewhat stark reaction to the current global instability, isn't it?
It is. But DW also highlighted something more concerning on the societal front, especially in Eastern Germany.
What's that?
A trend of rising right-wing extremism and nationalism among young people in Dessau, Saxony-Anhalt.
Oh, that's worrying.
Very. It's not just politics. It challenges social cohesion, the idea of a tolerant society. It really underlines the need to actively promote tolerance and push back against these divisive ideologies. Shows how geopolitical tensions can filter down and have very real local impacts.
Absolutely. And Russia's relationships are clearly shifting, too, often reacting directly to Western moves.
Definitely. RT reported June 30th that Moscow issued a pretty strong warning about the West freezing over $300 billion in Russian assets.
Yeah, that was a huge move. What did Russia say?
Maxim Oreshkin, who's high up in Putin's administration, said it significantly damaged trust in Western financial institutions. Putin himself apparently predicted that other countries might start ditching Western financial systems altogether, potentially boosting alternative systems in the long run.
That's a bold prediction. Could really reshape global finance if it happens.
It could. And RT also reported, same day, that Russia officially ended a decades-old nuclear safety agreement with Sweden.
An agreement about sharing info on nuclear accidents? Why now?
Directly linked to Sweden joining NATO. Russia sees that as an aggressive move, ending Sweden's historic neutrality and changing the whole security picture in the Baltic region. So they pulled the plug on the agreement.
But not everyone in Europe is taking such a hard line, are they?
No, there are differing views. Slovak President Peter Pellegrini, according to RT again, has been advocating for renewed diplomacy with Russia. He's urging EU members to actually start direct talks with Moscow.
Interesting. What's his reasoning?
He seems to think NATO military spending should be driven by national needs, not just fear. And he notably supported Prime Minister Fico's controversial meeting with Putin earlier. So it shows a clear split within the EU on how to deal with Russia.
Which is a real contrast to Germany's stance, right? DW noted June 30th that Germany sees Ukraine as its most important task in foreign policy, underscores the strategic importance they place on that relationship.
Big difference in approach there.
Okay, let's shift focus again, this time to the Middle East. Dynamics there remain incredibly complex, especially around nuclear issues and regional stability.
Always a volatile region. The Guardian reported June 29th that Iran's UN ambassador made this very clear statement. The nation's nuclear enrichment will never stop.
Wow, that's unambiguous. A pretty defiant stance amidst all the international concern and sanctions.
Very public, very firm. But then, kind of contradicting that, Yahoo News reported, also June 29th, that the CIA chief apparently told lawmakers that recent strikes on a metal conversion site in Iran significantly set back their nuclear program, possibly by years.
Wait, so Iran says enrichment will never stop, but the CIA says their program was just dealt a major blow.
Exactly. It suggests a major disruption to their ambitions, creating this real disconnect between the public rhetoric and maybe the operational reality on the ground. Understanding that gap is pretty crucial.
Yeah, definitely. Meanwhile, CNN reported, June 29th, that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu suggested that opportunities have opened up for releasing Gaza hostages. And he linked this to some recent operation related to Iran.
Implying a potential breakthrough tied to these broader geopolitical events adds another layer of complexity.
It does. And then on the financial side, Al Jazeera reported June 30th that a Norwegian pension fund decided to pull its money out from companies selling to the Israeli military.
Based on ethical concerns.
Yes, exactly. And that move feeds into that ongoing global debate about the role of investments in conflict zones and human rights issues.
It's a significant move from a major fund.
Yeah.
Though for balance, Al Jazeera also cited Scott Ritter's perspective on the same day.
What was his take?
His view was quite blunt, that recent events proved Israel can't defend itself against Iran. So you have these really sharply contrasting viewpoints on the region's security dynamics. Deeply sensitive stuff, clearly, with global repercussions.
Indeed. Okay, let's broaden out again slightly. Look at some instances of internal strife and public discourse around the world. We're seeing political divisions play out quite dramatically in several places.
Like in Brazil.
Yeah, Al Jazeera reported June 29th on Jair Bolsonaro holding a rally with supporters in São Paulo. This happened while he's actually on trial in the Supreme Court for alleged involvement in a coup plot.
Wow. That really throws the deep political divides in Brazil into sharp relief, doesn't it? Populist movements still commanding huge support, even amidst serious legal challenges.
It really does. And in Belarus, the BBC had a story June 30th about opposition figure Sergei Tikhanovsky. He spent 5 years in jail, but he's asserting he has not been broken.
Resilience there? Is he calling for action?
He's calling for the release of other political prisoners. It just highlights the ongoing tensions, the persistence of opposition, and frankly, the human cost of dissent in authoritarian regimes like Belarus.
A stark reminder.
Then in Armenia, things seem to be escalating between the government and the Armenian Apostolic Church. There are actual fears of civil conflict.
Over what?
Well, RT reported June 30th on claims by a former Ukrainian diplomat, Andrei Telejenko. He alleges Western governments are actually orchestrating the unrest, drawing parallels to how he claims things were manipulated in Ukrainian religious affairs.
So, accusations of external interference.
Yes. Plus, there are accusations of corruption against the church itself, and some influential figures, including clerics and a business magnate, have apparently been arrested. It shows how internal religious and political fights can get tangled up with these big international narratives and claims of manipulation.
Complex stuff. And these tensions aren't just playing out in traditional political arenas. Even music festivals are becoming sites for political expression.
You mean Glastonbury?
That's exactly. Professor George McKay told Al Jazeera, June 30th, that feelings are running high over politics at Glastonbury this year. It just shows how cultural events aren't necessarily separate. They often reflect and become platforms for the broader political mood.
Yeah, and that convergence led to a pretty major controversy this year, didn't it, with Bob Vylan?
Oh, right. The UK punk duo. The BBC reported June 29th and 30th about their performance, specifically chants of death to Israeli troops.
Which caused a huge backlash.
Immediate condemnation. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called it appalling hate speech.
And the BBC itself got drawn in, didn't they? Because they broadcast it live.
They did. Ofcom, the UK media regulator, criticized the BBC for not cutting the broadcast.
Right.
Which then led to the BBC acknowledging later that, yeah, the coverage should have been pulled.
So it's not just about the band's comments, it's this whole tangle of issues. Freedom of speech, political condemnation, media responsibility, especially in live situations with super sensitive topics.
A real minefield. And briefly, on the war front in Ukraine, Yahoo reported June 30th that Russia's summer offensive seems to be underperforming, not meeting expectations, though Kyiv isn't exactly celebrating. It's still a grinding conflict.
But there was also that controversial claim related to the Moscow concert hall attack back in March.
Yes. RT reported June 30th on claims made by the suspects in that massacre. They're alleging that a Ukrainian state entity actually ordered the attack and that ISIS-K was just used as a front.
What kind of details are they claiming?
Allegations about weapons coming from Ukraine, promises of payment. Ukraine, of course, has categorically denied any involvement whatsoever, calling the claims completely baseless.
So another example of the intense information war surrounding the actual fighting, narratives being fought over just as fiercely as territory. Okay, phew. From that large-scale geopolitical chessboard, let's shift our focus now. Let's look at the human element. Stories of safety, society, support. Sometimes, amidst all the big headlines, it's these individual stories that really resonate, reminding us of shared vulnerabilities, but also incredible resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. And sadly, some of these stories involve just profound tragedy. We have a pretty comprehensive account drawing from DW, RT, the New York Times, AP, BBC, all on June 30th, about a truly harrowing incident in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
What happened there?
2 firefighters were tragically killed and another one wounded in a sniper ambush. They were responding to a brush fire on Canfield Mountain.
An ambush. While responding to a fire.
Yes. Emergency crews were called to the fire, but shortly after they arrived, gunfire just erupted. An active sniper, using a high-powered rifle, deliberately targeting the first responders. Police confirmed they were taking sniper fire. It turned a routine call into just a horrific attack zone.
That's absolutely unthinkable, a direct assault on people risking their lives to help.
It's truly heinous. Investigators quickly suspected the fire itself might have been deliberately set as a trap, a lure to draw them in.
My God. Was the shooter caught?
Authorities later reported finding the suspected gunman's body on the mountain, with a firearm nearby. The shelter-in-place warning for residents was eventually lifted. Idaho's governor, Brad Little, denounced it as a heinous direct assault. The FBI got involved immediately, sending federal agents.
The community must be in shock.
Immense shock and grief, yes. It's just a stark, tragic reminder of the unpredictable, profound risks that first responders face every single day they put on the uniform.
Just awful. Beyond that terrible incident, there were other accidents, other stories catching attention too.
Yeah, some remarkable ones too. Yahoo News, June 29th, had this incredible story about an emaciated newborn baby found alive after surviving several days alone in a Phoenix apartment after the mother had died.
Oh my goodness. Miraculous survival.
An unbelievable testament to the will to live. Just incredible resilience.
And there was another story of heroism at sea.
Also Yahoo News, June 29th. A father apparently jumped overboard from the 4th deck of a Disney cruise ship after his child fell in.
He jumped in after the child, from 4 decks up.
Yes, a desperate act. Thankfully, the Disney Cruise Line rescue team responded incredibly quickly and rescued both of them. A terrifying situation with, thankfully, a miraculous ending.
Wow. On a more somber note, there were aviation incidents too.
Yeah, Yahoo News reported a fatal plane crash at Ottawa Executive Airport on June 29th. 1 person died. and it's under investigation by the Sheriff's Office and the FAA.
And there was something about Boeing, too, the Dreamliner.
Right. The BBC on June 29th touched on the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. It was once hailed as the safest, but they noted that whistleblowers have consistently been less sure about its safety record. They also briefly mentioned the Air India tragedy as a historical point of reference in ongoing aviation safety discussions.
Okay. And other major incidents?
ABC News reported June 29th on a devastating fire and explosion in Philadelphia. It killed one person, injured two others, and either leveled or severely damaged multiple homes.
It's just terrible.
And a really tragic bus crash in Tanzania. RT reported June 30th that a collision in the Kilimanjaro region killed at least 38 people, injured 28 more.
38 people. What caused it?
Apparently, a tire blowout followed by a fire on the bus. The report highlighted that this underscores ongoing road safety issues in Tanzania, where traffic deaths are often significantly underreported.
And then there was that bizarre story, the child driving a car?
Oh yeah, the BBC reported that on June 30th. A woman let a girl, apparently under 10, drive a car through a village. Someone caught it on video, sparked outrage. Just makes you wonder sometimes, doesn't it?
It really does. Shifting to health and well-being, BuzzFeed had an interesting piece June 29th.
What was that about?
About those small health signs that doctors and nurses say you should never overlook. It was all about encouraging proactive healthcare, listening to your body, getting checked out, even for minor things that could actually signal something serious.
Good advice. Always better safe than sorry with health.
Definitely. And the BBC noted June 30th that the ongoing COVID inquiry is going to specifically focus on the pandemic's impact on care services.
Looking at funding, staffing, care for vulnerable people during that really tough time.
Exactly. Trying to understand the challenges and learn lessons from how care services coped or struggled during the crisis.
Important work. Now let's look at some major humanitarian challenges and global development efforts.
Okay.
Al Jazeera and RT reported June 29th and 30th about a tragic gold mine collapse in Sudan. Karsh al-Fil mine, Eastern Nile State. At least 11 miners killed, 7 injured.
And this happened amidst the civil war there.
Yes. And the reports noted that both sides in the conflict are apparently exploiting gold resources to fund their fighting. Most of Sudan's gold comes from unregulated small-scale artisanal mining.
Which makes accidents like this more likely.
Tragically frequent, yeah. It highlights the terrible human cost of dangerous working conditions when they're made even worse by conflict and desperation. Basic safety just goes out the window.
It's just heartbreaking. And the refugee situation there is dire, too, isn't it?
Extremely. UN News reported June 30th that the World Food Program issued an urgent warning. Funding shortages are seriously threatening their relief efforts for millions of Sudanese refugees who rely entirely on WFP for survival.
So they could run out of food aid.
That's the fear. It could lead to widespread starvation if funding doesn't come through quickly.
Yeah.
A really critical situation.
And on a broader scale, there was that big UN conference on development financing.
Yes, FFD4, the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, just wrapped up in Sevilla, Spain. Al Jazeera and UN News covered it June 30th.
What was the goal there?
It's a once-in-a-decade kind of conference, and it's setting up a new global framework for how development is funded, tackling big issues like rising debt in developing countries, crises in aid funding. It really puts a spotlight on the challenges facing the global financial system, which in many ways seems to be failing the most vulnerable.
A huge undertaking. Okay, finally, let's touch on some social commentary, cultural observations. These often give us a glimpse into current societal narratives and tensions.
Like the manosphere.
Yeah, DW reported on that June 30th. This digital subculture where influencers apparently push misogynistic views to get engagement, attract audiences, make money.
That sounds
toxic, deeply concerning. The report discussed how it normalizes harmful stereotypes, fuels toxic masculinity, and raises big questions about how online platforms might be inadvertently shaping negative behaviors and promoting these really divisive ideologies. It's a dark corner of the internet that seems to be growing.
Worrying trend.
And then, in a totally different vein, cockfighting in Afghanistan.
Yeah, the Alton Telegraph, June 30th, had photos showing illegal cockfighting apparently still thriving in Kabul. Described it as a bloody pastime thriving in the shadows, a glimpse into cultural practices that persist despite being banned, often hidden from view.
And lastly, a historical reflection point.
Right. Yahoo, June 30th, mentioned a historian arguing something provocative, that viewing the Nazis simply as symbols of pure evil for the past 80 years has actually made the West complacent.
Complacent how?
His point seemed to be that oversimplifying them prevents us from understanding the nuances of how such regimes actually gain power. We risk missing the crucial historical lessons needed to prevent similar things from happening again. It's a call for a deeper, maybe more uncomfortable look at history.
Interesting thought. Okay, after all that intensity, maybe a change of pace is definitely needed.
Agreed. Let's take a quick look at the world of sports, cultural events. Often a lighter perspective, though sometimes still pretty impactful news in its own right.
Sounds perfect right about now. So, college football first. Yahoo Sports, June 29th, reported BYU quarterback Jake Retzlaff is apparently transferring. This follows an honor code suspension linked to a sexual assault allegation.
Wow. That really highlights the complexities, doesn't it? Dealing with serious issues like that, upholding integrity within college sports programs. It's tough.
Definitely. Okay, soccer action. Gold Cup.
Yeah, Yahoo Sports, June 30th. The U.S. men's national team survived a real nail-biter against Costa Rica. Advanced to the semis thanks to goalkeeper Matt Freese being the hero in the penalty shootout.
Nothing beats penalty shootout drama.
Always gets the heart rate up. And Al Jazeera, June 30th, noted Bayern Munich beat Flamengo 4-2. Pretty convincingly. That sets them up to face PSG in the Club World Cup quarters.
Big matchup. And England women's team gearing up for the Euros.
Yep, BBC, June 30th, discussing the big questions facing the Lionesses just 6 days before they start defending their title. Manager Serena Wigman apparently giving strong hints about who's starting. Lots of anticipation there.
And Crystal Palace fans are still waiting on Europa League news.
Seems so. BBC reported June 30th the decision on their fate has been postponed. Keeps the fans guessing. Builds the tension.
Okay, tennis. Wimbledon started?
Day one. BBC covered it June 30th. Stellar performances from players like Emma Raducanu, Carlos Alcaraz, Katie Boulter, all while dealing with some pretty challenging heat, apparently. Always a summer highlight, Wimbledon.
For sure. Rugby union news. Something about the Lions tour.
Yeah, BBC, June 30th again.
Yeah.
Williams is out of the tour due to injury, which led to this emotional last-minute call-up for Ben White.
How did he react?
He apparently said he haven't stopped shaking since he got the news. Just a pure shot of adrenaline, whirlwind of emotions for a player getting that kind of call.
Incredible. Basketball buzz. LeBron James trade rumors.
Always. Bleacher Report, June 30th, was ranking his top potential landing spots if he gets traded. Cavaliers, Warriors mentioned, fuels all the speculation among NBA fans, keeps the offseason interesting.
And unfortunately, some off-field news, too. Pollens.
Yeah, sad news. BBC, June 30th, reported the former England football star has been charged with drink driving after crashing his car. A real shame for a respected figure.
It is. Okay, shifting to celebrity and cultural stuff. Big wedding in Venice.
Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez. BuzzFeed covered it June 29th. Lavish affair, lots of celebs. Kim Kardashian, Sydney Sweeney were there. Kim K apparently described the ceremony as pure bliss.
Must be nice.
Ah, indeed. And Glastonbury Festival wrapped up.
Yeah, the big cleanup began. ABC reported June 30th on that, and attendees starting their journeys home followed all those vibrant photos from Sunday, really capturing the unique atmosphere of that festival. Music, arts, mud.
The whole experience.
Exactly. And finally, on a more somber note, to close this section, the passing of a Welsh opera legend.
Stuart Burrows. BBC reported his death June 30th at age 92. An internationally acclaimed singer, made his debut at the Welsh National Opera way back in 1963, left a huge legacy in classical music.
A true legend, indeed.
Wow, what an incredible amount of ground we've covered in this deep dive, haven't we?
We really have.
From, the super fast-moving world of AI and space exploration that are literally changing our future, to the incredibly complex web of global politics, then the resilience you see in those human stories, and even the lighter moments in sports and culture.
It's amazing how each piece, each nugget of information, when you put it in context, really does build a more complete, more coherent picture of, well, the world we're living in.
That's exactly the goal, isn't it, of these deep dives? To give you that clarity, that depth, a unique perspective, hopefully leaving you feeling genuinely well-informed, equipped to understand what's going on beyond just the quick headlines.
Yeah, building those connections, seeing the bigger patterns.
So maybe something to think about as you digest all this. Here's a final thought for you to mull over. In a world where information travels faster than ever, where the lines between what's human-created and what's machine-generated are getting blurrier, and where all these different narratives are constantly vying for our attention, what responsibility do we actually have? A responsibility to discern truth, to challenge the assumptions we encounter, and maybe even to actively shape the future stories we want told, instead of just passively consuming whatever's put in front of us.
How do we become active participants in understanding, not just observers?
Exactly. Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought. Keep that curiosity alive, everyone, and we'll be here for your next deep dive.